All right. I got about a minute after, so I'm going to go ahead and kick off the call. Appreciate everyone that has joined so far. So my name is Adam West. I'm the channel rep over at DLT for those of you who have not worked with me yet. Really do appreciate you joining the call today, and I'm going to quickly pass it over to Bruce Milligan, who will go over a couple sales plays and provide some great insight. And I'll be back on with you at the end of the call to answer any questions and close it out. So thank you so much. And Bruce, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Adam, and welcome everyone to June. Hopefully, everyone's summer is getting off to a good start here. I'm going to be talking today about some what might appear to be sales 101 stuff, but I'm also going to cover AI and how this can be incorporated into this sales process that we have. So let's go through the agenda real quick here. I'm going to reintroduce something that I've lived by for a long time, which is diagnose before you prescribe. I'll be talking about that at the beginning here. I'll then get into the sales process and the steps that we should be taking as professional salespeople to help upsell our existing customers. I'll be getting into a little depth about how to structure the discovery meeting, and I'll be introducing a new tool to you that can help you with this discovery process that we're testing out. In fact, no longer than an hour ago, I tested out this form with an actual customer environment, and I'll kind of show you how we use that as we get into this. And I'll be talking about how AI fits, and then wrapping up with a call to action. All right, so let's get into it. So let's not talk tech for a second. That's not me, nor is that my doctor. But let's get away from talking tech here at the onset here, and let's just talk about something that we've all done, which is going to the doctor. So I just had the misfortune of going in to see the doctor recently because of some back pain. And the doctor immediately started asking me questions. The first question was, tell me why you're here. Then they got into where does it hurt? And I was pointing out exactly where the pain was. How is this impacting your daily activities? What have you done to feel better? What have you tried to help alleviate some of this pain? And while a lot of this seems very intuitive, we really then allow them to check us over. Now, in this particular case, the doctor said, can you recreate the pain that you're feeling so I can help diagnose this more effectively, which is a really good question. And then they come up with the suggestions. And this seems very common sense if we're going in to see a doctor, because let's look at the flip side of this. Let's say you walk into the doctor's office and instead of diagnosing first, they would have just said, here's what I would recommend. They would have a real credibility problem if that happened, because you could ask, well, why are you recommending that? And are you really listening to me? Do you understand what it is that's going on with me? And how did you arrive at that conclusion? And really, what it comes down to, and that is not my doctor, a situation where it's time to find a new doctor. So this is all common sense, right? But how often in our job, in our role as salespeople, are we not asking the right questions at the beginning? And when we get into a live customer situation, we need to be asking the right questions. So I'm going to introduce I'll call it a methodology that I learned way, way, way long ago, like probably the 80s or 90s, that I think is very relevant today. So if you get into a situation where you're talking and trying to ask the right questions, you can structure it along the lines of being able to do it effectively. So it starts out with a situation and determine what their situation currently is. And I'm going to put an S up on the screen there. Second step then is find out what their problems are. And for that, I'm going to put a P up there. I probably don't need to do this spelling for you, but I'm going to do it anyway. Then third, and this is the part that we miss the most, is we uncover, or we should be uncovering with questions, the implications of the problem, the so what, if you will, which is the I. And then the last piece of this is recommend a potential solution after you've determined their situation, talked about their problems, uncovered implications. Then you might be able to recommend a potential solution based on what's called a need payoff, which is the N. Now, if you are trying to keep up with this, there's a book that I've probably talked about in the past called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. This was back in the 80s or 90s when he first came up with this. And I just think it's a really good format to use. And to this day, whenever I go into a meeting, I write SPIN on the on my note page to kind of get into a situational question so that I'm asking valid questions that are going to lead to a potential solution for them. So before we jump into text, or I'm sorry, into our tech world, let's just give you another example here. So let's say you're in the market for a new car. You walk into the showroom. Salesman should come up and say, "Hey, tell me about your driving situation. What kind of car do you have? Is it new or used? And how often do you drive every day?" Just facts about your current situation. Then, let's say you have a long commute and you've got a used car. The salesman would say, "Well, if you notice, fuel prices are going up." He's trying to find a problem that might be going on because of this driving situation. So, of course, the answer is yes, fuel prices are going up. And then ask the implication question. Have these higher fuel prices impacted your monthly budget? Well, duh, yes, of course it has. So then he would ask a question along the lines of, what if you had a vehicle that has 3 times better mileage than your used car? And that is really how to structure the right kind of questions to ask. This is just a new car example. I'm going to give another example next that is into one of the situations we run into when we're talking to a customer. All right, so here's what I've learned. Oh, I've learned a lot of things in 40 years of doing this. But one of the things I've learned is if there's no pain, there's no sale, meaning if the customer's not experiencing some kind of a problem, then we're going to have an awfully hard time selling them something. In these tough times for government, they need to be able to really understand problems before they're willing to expand the renewal or add anything else to it. So we're going to take this theme now and go into a real life situation that I think would be of interest to most people on this call. So the approach. So we're going to talk about how we approach the customer to start this process going, which can either be a short email or a warm call. And that's usually what we found is 3 to 4 months prior to the renewal. The call that I was just on about an hour ago, the renewal is coming up in September, 4 months out. We said, hey, let's set up a time to talk about this renewal that you've got coming up instead of just emailing the quote. Nothing against people emailing quotes, but for larger ones, and this one was about 80K or so. It just makes sense that you want to talk to them, and it's a good sized city too. So that's the approach. Then we do the discovery, and this is where a lot of times the sales rep will bring a technical person on the call. I'm not saying not to do that, but technical resources are sometimes hard to get. They're usually on a billable assignment, and it's not easy for them to always get on a first discovery call with you. So usually there's somebody else on there with you. The lesson here is to take good notes, and I'll show you a way to do it, plus a tool, and this is where AI can come in. I'll get into that in a minute. But you don't want to talk about new products. And I guess I'll call it the counsel here is if you bring in a tech person, their first reaction is probably to give a technical overview of the product, and here's what Docs does, here's what this does. We don't want to talk about new products here. If they really push you on it, you might have to do a quick demo of something, but you really don't want to talk about new products yet. But if you do a demo, just make sure it's very high level. Really what we're trying to do here is break the sales process down into logical pieces. And if you think about it, you've done a discovery, which is usually 20 to 30 minutes long. And that's usually enough time for you to gather information. But if you say, oh, and here's what the answer is, if you already know the answer before you've gotten the questions finished, you're not going to have that credibility with the customer. So my advice, and this is what I've lived by for quite a while in my career, is you do the discovery and then separately you do the demo as that. And the other part of this, and that's where the taking the good notes comes in, is the last thing you want to do is have the discovery call with yourself and the customer, then bring in the technical person who asks the same questions that you've already asked the customer. So that's where taking good notes comes in, and there's a tool, again, that'll be showing you that'll help you do that. Then the third, that's when you come in and present the solution. This is the prescription part of it, if you will. I like to do it separately, only because it's I think a really important thing to do. Joe Bayless and I have talked, if Joe's out there, we've had around and arounds on this. It's better if you can do it separately, but if they really insist on it, give them a very high level overview of it. But you want to present the solution, and this is where AI can come in because you're reviewing what you learned, and there's some AI tools that can really help you provide a lot of punch in this demo. So this is the sales process. I'm going to give you an example now. So GIS, what I'm going to do here is give you an example similar to what we showed you on the new car example. This is going to be focused specifically on GIS, which is obviously a big thing in government. And I'll just say this, just about everybody has Esri or ArcGIS Pro. Just about everybody has Autodesk, Simple 3D, or AutoCAD, or Revit. And just about everyone has struggled with integration between the two. And Autodesk has made a lot of advancements in this area that a lot of the customers aren't even aware of. So quick example here. So this is a actual conversation with the GIS manager. I can't give out the name of the account, but he had assured us that these issues are the same, whether it's a larger city, a mid-sized city, or a small city or county. They all face the same problems. Some of these problems are generation of construction documents not standardized. He put it this way, workflow is spaghetti. Construction documents not captured in a common repository. You guys can read just as well as I can, but these are all pain points. These are problems that they're facing, silos of information. He literally said, this is killing me. Once it takes a year to get something from CAD into GIS. And as you'll see when I lay out the questions to ask these people, it's a really effective way of finding the implications of this. Need to develop and work on electronic submittals, inspection workflows are dated, and on and on. I mean, he had 15 of these things, and we did not break out the demo, the laptop at all. It was just note taking. Then we came back in and did a demonstration of how we can address these things. So that's just an example of how to do it. So how do we net this out into actual questions? So the way I would approach something like this is you ask a real easy one. Are you using ArcGIS Pro or are you using anything from Esri? And 90+% of the people are going to say yes. I mean, there's very few alternatives to Esri. So that's your situation question. Then the problems. Hey, we talked to a lot of our customers who've told us they struggle to integrate the disparate types of data. And one indicator is this as-built backlog, which can be measured in months or even years. Have you encountered problems like this? If you're not asking this kind of question, you're really not uncovering any pain. All you're saying is, well, we got great ways to integrate Esri and Autodesk. And they would be like, who cares? So you give them that kind of question, and then you go into implication. This means that work crews go out to a site, the GIS data is not matching what's there. Does that happen to you? And you could even drill down into more detail from that, but you want to get implications, because whenever you do bring in the technical person to do the demo, or when you propose something, you're going to want to say, now, when we had the discovery call, you mentioned that you have this backlog that's the exact time, but let's say it's 12 months, which means work crews, don't have up-to-date data and they're wasting time. And that's the kind of ammunition you need when you're doing a demo like this. And then you go into a need payoff. So I'll get into this more, but there are tools you already have licensed. And a lot of times they just don't, and that's Docs, by the way, if you didn't know that. And I'll tell you what, the more I work on this, Docs is such a key piece to this. And I've used the Chicago O'Hare example to this a lot, but they're getting them to store their documents in the cloud. Once we did that, then they started getting other applications on the cloud, like ABC Pro. They had Takeoff. They had Build. That's when everything kicked in for them. So that's where you want to go, is to get that need payoff question in there, and then you bring it in. So, and I was debating whether or not to show this. If you don't have this video and you're talking to an Esri customer, the link will be in the PowerPoints, which I believe is going out. So I won't go through this whole thing. I'll let her talk a little bit
I'd
before.
like to share with you the latest integration in ArcGIS. It's the ability to seamlessly interact with engineering files stored in Autodesk BIM 360. BIM 360 allows GIS professionals and designers to better collaborate with shared projects and data. Now that I'm connected, I'll refresh to ensure I have access to the most recent Autodesk.
Okay, so the idea here is, if you guys noticed, she was wearing an Esri shirt because she's an Esri employee, but this is Esri logging into the audit. She had BIM 360. Obviously, this is a little dated, but she's logging on to the Autodesk cloud to get engineering data. And to have somebody from Esri say that to a Esri person is extremely powerful. So I would suggest, and if you don't have the link that's on here, I think Adam's going to be sending out the PowerPoints with the links in it after we're done. But if you don't have this video, just drop me a note. I think you all know how to get a hold of me. I'm in the invite in case you don't, because I think this is a really important part of this conversation that we have with Esri customers. So here's what I'd like to do is kind of pivot a little bit and get into this discovery call process. And in order to do that, I'm going to take a typical situation, and this is exactly what the DLT rep and I just had. We approached them with a very non-threatening email that I'll show you here on the next slide that said, hey, your renewal's coming up. We'd like to talk to you about how you're using products and tools that you might have available to you that you're not aware of. Can we set up a time to do it? The IT people sent them a note right back, and we set up the meeting. Again, literally, it was an hour ago. And in the call, they're all people from what they called ITAM, which is their asset management group. This is a mid-sized city, not a huge city. And everyone there was involved with software asset management, and they're not going to buy anything. They're going to renew the subscription, but they're just going to go to the users and say, how's everything going? Well, great. So they vet it, and I would wager to guess that 75% of the renewals that we do are somehow being touched by IT people. I might be wrong on that because I'm not in the trenches like you guys are day in and day out, but it's probably a pretty good percentage is IT. And there's really nothing we can do about that. They have a process that they've set up. It's usually, hey, if it's anything software related, it's got to go through IT. So best case scenario, we want to get in front of the end users. And when I show you kind of how we approach this survey and the discovery call we just had, you'll kind of see how we can do that. And we position it to say, hey, there's functionality in what you have that you're probably not using that would be good to know about. So, so here's kind of the setup email. And again, you'll get copies of this. It's, as you can see, it's very easy. I mean, here's your renewal. It's coming up, lots of changes, set up a time to talk, 30 minutes, boom, it was done. And again, the DLT reps have experienced people just emailing them back saying, here's the dates that we can do this. So if they don't, we obviously make a soft call into them and kind of go from there. So from there, we set up the discovery meeting, and this does not have to be formal, okay? The more I've done, the more of these I've done, the more I realize that less is more type of thing. So, but you want to get an account overview, their organization, what their goals are, pain points that they have. Then you get into their products, like what are they using? Is it Civil 3D, Revit, AutoCAD? And you try to find white space. And again, the methodology that I'm going to show you here in a second will help you do all that. And then just summarize everything. All right, so let me jump in here. So I'm going to share this form here. And this came about through a lot of trial and error. What I found is when we have calls with customers where we're asking to get information, we are typically not, first of all, asking the right questions, but also we're not capturing what's going on when they answer the question. So let's just use an example here. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm just going to pick the town where I live here in Illinois, city of Evanston. I'm going to put Bruce on here. Doesn't matter what the email address is. Then this is supposedly for DLT, but if you do use it, you can have it email. So this will send the results to whatever you check in here. So you could put your name. If it's, whoever it is, if you're not on this list, that's how you do that. So then during the call, and I tried to prompt this as best I can. And some of you may be wondering, wait a minute, Bruce, what about the Prezi? Well, you guys know me. I love my Prezis and I'm never going to give them up. But the Prezis were not capturing anything. And when you're doing a discovery call and you're trying to listen to what the customer's saying and try to take notes, the Prezi doesn't really do that. It does walk you through it, but so you'll kind of see. So this is exactly what I said at the beginning, that, hey, we want to just learn about how you're doing things today. There's a lot of tools that you may not even know that are out inside your collections. And we'll cover your renewal at the end, but this will probably take 20 or 30 minutes. So then you just click that. In this particular case, there were 4 people, and I'm just going to put all, I'm going to pretend Evans, we just had the call with Evanston. So I'm just going to put all in ITAM here. I mean, this is a free-form field. So then you ask, where do you fit in the organization? And I'm going to show you kind of where these pivots come in. So if they say, well, I'm an engineer, then you click on end users an end user, and they'll be able to, you'll ask them, are you familiar with some of the details of project delivery, which they may or may not know that. If it's facilities or if it's CAD BIM, they would have the same thing. But if it's IT, it skips to this because the IT people are not probably going to understand how they do a capital program, a project in their capital plan. They're IT people. So you then ask different questions like, where's your organization in regards to moving to the cloud? Well, we're moving in that direction, but haven't moved Autodesk yet. Where do you store your Autodesk data? I mean, these are questions that the IT people will probably know. And if they're not knowledgeable about this, you obviously need to talk to somebody who is. But let's just say we put it all on a file server. Then you ask them, well, have you implemented the docs that are part of your collections? And I put a link in here that you can click that will take you right to that link in case they do ask you that. So let's just say no to that. But notice if they say yes, it pivots to something else where it goes right to design review. So let's just say they say no. Why not? Usually they'll give you any kind of questions like, why should we need it? And boom, I put in questions here. So why should they? So this gives you kind of a checklist. You can say, well, for example, if you have ArcGIS, that's how they want it to be integrated. Or we've had problems with VPN. Again, getting back to the the pain questions, like, here's some of the things that you're going to want because you're a technical person. Whenever you get to the demo or the more detailed discussion, they're going to want to know, why would they be interested in the cloud? And this captures everything. And you'll see when I show you the email that comes out of this, what comes out of it. So would it make sense to talk about it? Let's just say they say yes. Then you get into the premium discussion. So if they already have premium or they don't, like this particular customer we have did not have it, but they have more than 50 seats. So you can put yes. And then I've just learned this is a good way to kind of ease into it. You provide single sign-on, they say yes. And, as part of your Autodesk as part of your Autodesk subscription, you get single sign-on. So they'll automatically authenticate to their Autodesk account. So they may know that, they may not. But then this is where the premium comes in, where you can say, hey, you might be interested to know that they've got this premium support, blah, blah, blah. And, the IT people are going to care about this. The Civil 3D people aren't. So the way that these flows go, it's really designed to kind of walk the rep through these questions and then have everything captured. So if they're saying they're interested, they just yes there. You then get into ArcGIS questions. They probably wouldn't have known anything about ArcGIS. So you can kind of skip down in here if you wanted to. And then we get into the renewal discussion. In discussions with the DLT management, I think we determined let's leave this to the end so that we gather some good information. And what you want to do is say, hey, since they're the IT people, there's a lot of stuff in here that we'll talk about that would be more applicable for the people who have, who are users of either Civil 3D, Revit, or AutoCAD. Can you set up a meeting for that? Because now they understand why you need to meet with them, because they really couldn't answer a lot of these questions. So then you just put send information, then a follow-up if they put the date. I put notes in here, like if they say I'm going to Bermuda, so that when you call them back, you'll know Bermuda back July 10th or whatever it happens to be. And then whatever other notes you want to put in there. Then you press submit and you're done. You know, at this point, you might want to go through the renewal, you might not want to. But what happens is you then get an email. And let me just pull up a version of this email. So this is just the email that this is one I did before, but the idea is you then, and this is where AI comes in. So really all you got to do here is copy this. I've set up a query inside ChatGPT where, because this is gobbledygook, right? This really doesn't tell you much about what happened here. So I then go into ChatGPT, which is right here. Whoops, let me pull that up here. You guys don't really want to see my email. You just paste all this in here. And so I'll just put, I call this the Cook County query. And then you just paste that in there. And ChatGPT then does what ChatGPT really does. It takes gobbledygook and it puts it into something that's a little more, I'll call it user friendly. So it gives you indicators, it gives you whatever you want in here. And if this is too much, if this is more than what you'd want to do, but to me, this is really helpful stuff. I mean, you could give this to your technical person and say, you know, here's why we want to look at docs, and here's how they're storing data today. And here's, you know, these are the notes basically from your document. So here's sales place post vacation. It even, you know, figured all that stuff out. And then if you want, it's asking you if you want in a PDF or Word format, which you just say yes to, and away you go. So the Word, let me just see if I pull this down here. I think it's in my downloads. Yeah. So this is the PDF version of it. So again, this is probably not customer facing, although you could make it customer facing if you just ask ChatGPT to do it. We tried to build some of this into what's called an automation. And what we found is the reps all want a different way of looking at it. So we're going to let you do a lot of that kind of ChatGPT or Copilot work if you want. But what's kind of cool here is the IT people, when we had this meeting an hour or so ago, I said, you know, if you're using, they said, yeah, we're using AutoTurn. And I said, you know, there's a tool called ADT that you've already got licensed, and you could save having to pay Transoft for AutoTurn, and this is better integrated and you already own it. So, and that's usually because usually the IT people aren't going to say, well, yeah, let's get that. I mean, they're going to want the engineering people to look at it. So it's a way for us to get in front of the engineering people. And that's where the role that I put in earlier comes into play, because you can now have custom questions for that. The other thing that came out today was I asked if you have any Bentley products here. And they said, well, they looked it up. They must have looked it up on their purchasing system, because they said, yeah, we have something called WaterCAD, and they didn't really know what that was. And I said, well, you know, there's a solution that Autodesk offers that competes with that, that's better integrated with Autodesk, that's probably cheaper than what you're paying Bentley for that. And if you're not asking these questions, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because these renewals, I mean, I've been in jobs where I've been kind of a hunter rep, and I wish I had an opportunity. I worked for a company called Infor before this, and I wish I had a situation where the renewals, you know, they almost had to talk to us. And I think it's a real wasted opportunity, frankly, if we're not asking these kind of questions. So that's the form. We're testing this out right now. So like this week, I'm doing probably 5 or 6 of these, and I did the first one literally again just like an hour ago, and I'm tweaking these as I go. But this is I think a real good way of organizing yourself without having to do a lot of prep work. So I'll open that up for questions when we're done, but I wanted to share that tool with you, and just to let you know it's not quite ready for prime time yet. So, and by the way, the other thing that I've learned to do is when you're doing these kind of discovery call type things, one of the things that I've learned to do, so let me just put this in here. I'm going to go back into ChatGPT. So like if I put in here, run the city of Evanston script, and leverage their strategic plan, they have the, you have the notes in there, and what this is going to do is say, well, this is okay, maybe not the best way to do it, but this is kind of the script. I'm going to make this just tie Autodesk products to their plan, to their strategic plan. So then it's going to go through and just give you, here's their strategic plan, and it tells you how you can do that based on the notes that you've captured. So I would really encourage you to do this, because once you get into that meeting with them, where you're going to get into more detail and show them products and so forth, you're going to want to show something like this. And what I've learned the hard way is that if you lead with this, it's not, the message doesn't stick as well as it would if you weren't, like, as opposed to doing the discovery. So that's why I put in that slide at the beginning. The process is you do the discovery, and then separately you do the kind of the roll up your sleeves demo, do all that kind of stuff. If you lead with the AI, it's just not nearly as effective, because there's that credibility issue that we talked about with the doctor. So what I've tried to do here today is give you guys some ideas on how to leverage that renewal that we all know is coming up. I would suggest trying this on a smaller account, whether they have 4 seats, 10 seats, 25 seats, 50 seats. The sled accounts operate very much the same way. They all do hydraulics. They all have to do drainage plans. They all have to do swept path analysis so they can see how well their design is working. And a lot of times we're missing opportunities. And even if it's a small thing, like let's say they say, yeah, we'd like to get rid of auto turn from Transoft and use Autodesk vehicle tracking. There's no license sale there, but there is consulting in there. So you would get in there, show them about, here's how you use AVT, here's how it works. And whenever you do that, you're going to get more and more opportunities to sell them other things that are bigger in nature. You get in there any way you can sometimes, and try to do your best to do that. So as a call to action, again, I would suggest picking an account. You don't have to pick like 10 accounts here. I think you can just pick maybe a handful of accounts that might be good candidates for this survey. And if you could write a note down, maybe something like that next week, to just drop me a note at bruce@whitelakeconsulting.net if you do want to see the survey and try to use it. And I would just play with it. I mean, you can't really break this thing. The only thing I'll ask is just put test in the name of the account. Like if it's City of Evanston, just put test, even though I know I just didn't do that. And some of you may wonder, well, where does this data go? Right now it goes to DLT. You'll get the email that is the kind of the output to all this. But the data, all the results are all stored at DLT inside Excel. So we can run reports and pivots and all that stuff if you need to. What we've found is, having done this now for maybe a week or so, we've kind of been toying with this thing and testing it out, is that the only real thing that the data does for you in Excel is it just gives you a list, by account of where all your opportunities are, which is important. Not saying it's not, but the better path would probably be to, if you find an opportunity at, let's say, the City of Evanston, you just open up a new opportunity inside your CRM, and you can just paste the notes right into that opportunity in the notes section of it. And so that's where that would come into play. There's no real way for us to do it any other way. You would, if you wanted to have the data stored in your site, we would have to work out something with your IT organization to get that kind of thing going. All right, so I am looking here at questions. Adam, it looks like you've handled a lot of these, like the updated form. I think about football. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that the reps I've talked to, they really struggle with this discovery call. And having done this for a long time, it was frustrating to me that we go through all this effort to get everything, to talk about the renewals and everything, and then nothing happens. And this really fills a gap in that whole process. So I'm happy that you guys will have an opportunity to try this out on your own. And I will open it up for any questions. Adam, is there a good way to do that, or how do we do this exactly?
Well, if folks do have questions, and Bruce, thank you so much for the presentation. Fantastic and a lot of great information. So first, just wanted to say that. Second, if there are any questions other than the ones that we've already fielded, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom webinar link and ask a few questions if you have them. If not, you can always email me or Bruce after the fact, and we can respond accordingly. So, Bruce, I'll let you say your final thoughts if you have anything else, and to close this. And
Sure.
if any questions come in, I'll let you know.
Sure. Yeah. So, we kind of used AI as somewhat of a hook for this meeting. And I hope you leave this thinking that, yes, AI has a role. Yes, AI can certainly help. But don't assume that AI is going to do everything that you normally do as salespeople, because if that's your mindset, your management's going to also think the same thing. Well, why do we need Bruce when we've got this bot over here who's not going to bug me about vacations and commission and that kind of stuff? And this way you're going to be able to leverage this whole AI phenomenon, which is going on now, and it's all around us. I would become I guess I'll just call it, learning about it sooner rather than later is the way to go on this thing. So that would be my closing remarks, Adam, on that.
Yeah, Bruce, appreciate that. So I did get a question. Would feedback be accepted if we would like to see changes? So I'm assuming they're talking about feedback to the forms that you created and et cetera. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's always gonna be, like the call I just had, there was a curve that they kind of threw at us that I wasn't expecting. So I updated the form. So yeah, I would say feedback is always welcome on this, because that's really where we get good. That's where the Prezis, frankly, were able to get refined, is through calls and that kind of thing. So really, somebody messaged me, the Prezis going away, and they're not. As you can see, the form acts kind of like Prezi, but it's really more for the form, at least, is more for that discovery call that you have with a customer. I think that's really where you want to go with it. For cold calls and for kind of call blocks that we do, I think the Prezis work really well, but we don't want to use the Prezis to have a discovery call. So.
One thing I will say here to help close this out is, just so everyone does know, I did put Bruce's email in the chat. I know he said to reach out to him with any questions or any additional feedback or comments. So I did put his email in the chat for your reference. So well, no more questions right now, Bruce. So what I'll do is just close out by saying thank you, everyone, for joining us for this Battlefield call. Really do appreciate it. Bruce, as always, fantastic information. Really do appreciate your time and the information that you provide. It is invaluable to our business. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and can't wait until next time. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.